Hello and welcome to iTeach Plus virtual event. My name is Jennifer Moss. I'm an e-learning instructional designer at UAF, and today we're going to be talking about mobile apps for learning in this virtual iTeach event. And if you're tuning in and you have questions, if you could send those to us, that would be great. And I'm going to try and share my screen here so that you can see what I can see. And I'm just going to make it a little nicer. All right. So mobile apps for learning. So we're going to start off talking about workflow. So I'll just go through this presentation pretty quickly. This is mobile apps specifically for iPad or Android or iPhone sorts of apps. So they're smart apps. And as an instructor, what we need to look at first before we even start thinking about how and why to use an app, or what app to use and how to choose that app for what you want to teach. There's a lot of exciting apps out there, and I think there's a tendency to get very excited about working with technology and leap into it a little ahead of looking at your objectives. So speaking first I wanted to talk a little bit about workflow. And the first thing that you need to do when you're thinking about using an app with your class, whether it's an online class or face-to-face class or anything, is to first figure out what students need to learn and how can that be measured. So basically, what are your objectives with the exercise that you're going to put them through? And with that in mind, then identify the technology that will help to get you to that point, to help you deliver that material and to help students through the exercise. And then it's helpful to visualize that workflow, like how does it actually happen, and from the beginning to the end. And then finally test it out and make sure that it works as planned, and then make modifications. So my colleague developed this kind of visual representation of this process that I thought was really good. So it's first describe what the students need to learn, what technology are you going to use to facilitate that, and I'll talk about choosing that technology in just a minute and how you go through that process. And then if you visualize your workflow, whether that's just in like an outline format or if you use something like PictoChart, this is an app that you can use for doing infographics and visualization. So you could use any app that's like a tool for mind mapping or that sort of thing, or sketching. It's not really about the tool, it's about the process. And so just outlining what you're doing, and then at the end, take it for a test drive.
Jen, I'm going to just interrupt here. I think that's really important to do a workflow because, you might have the process in your mind, but once you actually try it out, I think it's really important, and it's a really good way to find the little hiccups. And I think it's also important to think about this maybe in two ways, maybe one from the student side, and you might actually watch someone else kind of go through the process, and then also from your side, because you will have additional steps that your students won't. So I really I'm glad that you brought this up.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. And I should I'm sorry, I should introduce you to everyone. This is Heidi Olson, instructional designer also, and learning, what's your official title? More official title than that?
learning design coordinator, but I'm one of the design team.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks for joining me today, Heidi.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, looking at it from the student perspective, because you might think that it's this awesome process and workflow, and then if you experience it from the student side, or if you have someone else go through it, then you could get a totally different picture and decide that you need to make some revisions to that workflow. For sure. So a lot of faculty have that question, like, well, how do I choose the best technology to do this exercise with students? And I was thinking about this and kind of came up with a list of the process that I go through when I'm developing an exercise or an assessment activity for students. And the first thing that I might do is to ask my colleagues or other instructional designers to help brainstorm that process, to get ideas for things that work well. But also just, if you're at a conference or anywhere, reading online, notice what others are using and how it's working for them, or what ways they're using it. And even if it's not something that's within your discipline area, it might be a tool that you could use to help streamline something that you're presenting to your students. And then also just do some research. Google for ideas. This is what instructional designers do all the time. And there's some tricks to Googling for those good ideas. And what I like to do is I limit the results that I get from the Google search by the time last updated. So you want to research reviews and articles about technology that have been published within the last year. Otherwise, it might have a new version's come along, or maybe it's not as good as it used to be, or not as with the current times, and technology changes so fast that that it's important to keep that in mind. And then also search, when you're doing those searches, think about what you want the students to walk away, with. If you're wanting to do a reflective exercise with students, you're not going to be searching for presentation apps. So, I mean, that's kind of obvious, but really getting specific with your search query is a good idea. And then also read reviews. The apps all come with reviews that users have made, and you might find a good app that only has 2 stars out of 5 or something, but read to see why it only got 2 stars and be aware of that when you're testing it out. I always read and watch tutorials on how to get started with apps. They're always available out there somewhere, and if it's not available on the app website, the company, then it's probably out there on YouTube. And then try it out first. Test and try. And then the next thing, of course, is to write out clear and concise instructions for students to follow when you're applying that to your course, to your Blackboard site or your course website, where you're asking students to follow the directions with that app. It can become pretty overwhelming for students if they don't have a few instructions, and also pointing to resources. And then as the semester goes, troubleshoot with whatever you're using, and learn more with it as you go.
I think again, writing the clear instructions is really important, and I think it's also important to perhaps not go into a lot of detail, maybe just write a few short steps, and then have a more detailed instructions for those students who really need more support, because you might lose people if you don't get right to the meat of things right away. And I also think that software and application developers have become much better at providing their own support or support documents that you can link to, and that saves you from having to rewrite things if you can point them right to the original source. I think that is something that I try to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. As we're going through the a few apps that I wanted to mention. One thing that you can look for when you're choosing the tool that you're going to use, whatever it is, the app, is to look for apps that connect with the services that we already use. So Google Apps for Education, a lot of these apps will connect with the Google Drive file system, or maybe they connect with Dropbox and you use that in your class. Finding those ones that are well connected in some way just helps to streamline the use for everybody. If we look back at, well, no, I have one, and I think I have a different example too, but if we look back at this example, she's posting the assignment and instructions in Blackboard, then the student creates document in Word, and then it goes to Blackboard, and then you open it on your iPad, you open the image on her iPad, this is from an instructor perspective, in BB Grader, which we'll talk about, and then using Explain Everything, which is another one we'll talk about, transfer it to PDF to Dropbox. And Dropbox is what I'm mentioning here, like the Explain Everything app connects directly to Dropbox. So that's a really nice feature. So keeping that in mind and looking for those connections with file systems, it can just be really helpful. So there's shapes and all shapes and sizes of apps out there. So I just wanted to make a point that I'm just going to bring up a few and kind of maybe one or two for each different type of thing that we're talking about, and different objective or exercise that you're looking at, because there's lots and lots of apps out there, and some are better than others, and you just have to explore them or get recommendations from designers or your colleagues. So just wanted to mention that there is a BB Grader app out there. There's also a Blackboard Learn app for students. They both have limited functionality, and they are potentially frustrating. They have ups and downs. So try that one out. Try it out. If you're teaching on Blackboard, using Blackboard, you should try it out and install install both and see what it looks like from the student perspective as well, not just the instructor perspective. And if you would like help figuring out how to test that out, we can certainly help with that if you have questions, or OIT can help with looking at it from the student's point of view through this app. It's worth doing because the students have a totally different perspective. And students also are more and more using the mobile app to do their whole class, sometimes on their phone. And so knowing that in advance, it might be a good idea to ask your students before class starts in a survey or something, what they're using to connect to your class site with. If they're going to be using their phone or their mobile device, then it would be worth testing for sure.
I think one thing to think about is from the student side, there are some things within that you create in Blackboard that won't work with a student who's using Blackboard Learn. There's some quizzing things and some content related information, and it won't work with the Blackboard Learn application, and it also won't work when a student tries to access Safari on an iPad. So or a mobile device, if that is the only way that they're connecting with your course, then regardless if they're using the app or going straight with the browser to access Blackboard, there's going to be some limitations.
We also have access to Google Classroom, and this is a helpful app if you're teaching using Google Classroom. I don't really have a lot to say about that, but I just wanted to mention that it exists. This is an example of another example from my colleague who has used Google Classroom in her course, and so an example of the workflow that she's done is posting the assignment and instructions in Google Classroom with a link to a student creates an image in Photoshop and then submits it to Google Classroom, which Classroom is an app that that connects directly with Drive, and so it automatically saves it into her Drive, and she can open it on her iPad and make comments and annotate the image and save it as a PDF for feedback, and then export it back to Drive, and it goes back into, or she can record the grade back in Classroom. So that's another workflow, example of workflow. I put this one under note-taking, notability, but also, like you can see here, it's an app that you can use for annotation. A lot of these apps, you know, they kind of cross multiple boundaries. So just testing them out and finding the one that you like best and works best for you and what your objectives are for the assignment and how you want to work with students. And keeping it simple too, I think is important. You know, don't try to use too many apps. Like if you use all of these apps at the same time, then, you know, your students, you'll be confused and your students will be confused too. You know, just keep it simple and just find that streamlined workflow. But Notability is
I think one.
Heidi?
I just wanted to say one great thing about Notability is that you can use it offline. So if you have internet issues, you could download everything at the office and then take the iPad offline and do your updates. And then when you get back to connectivity land, then you're ready to upload your feedback. So that's one nice thing about using apps like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And some of the apps have that capability and some of them don't. So that is something, again, to double check when you're shopping around. Some other ones for note taking and annotating are Penultimate and Note Shelf. But Notability is a pretty nice and nicely designed presentation, I think. WordPress app, if you are hosting your course discussion on Community at UAF or other WordPress site, you can use the WordPress app to engage in discussion or actually creating new posts or, you know, editing your pages. You can do everything on this app. It's pretty great. And you can connect to the community at UAF with it. And I'll just say one more thing about this. You can set it up to receive notifications also. So if you are the type of instructor who's really extra present in class, you know, you can get those notifications that your students have posted or commented, and then you can be right there for them to comment back and be really close with what they're doing. So it's almost kind of a live, it's still asynchronous, but if you're responding really quickly, then it will show them that your presence is there strongly.
So Jen, is the WordPress app, is that specifically for discussions, or is it just the
Yeah, no, it's not. A lot of these apps that I'm kind of mentioning for specific purposes. You can edit your WordPress site, you can edit pages, you can edit your posts, you can manage users, you can pretty much do everything with this app. But when you're, I think it's probably easier to build a website, course website, on a laptop or regular computer, and then use the app for more in the moment things, in my experience.
Yeah, I have used this to make quick edits on the fly,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been really helpful to have that.
Yeah, yeah. Explain Everything is another app it's kind of like, this one is more like a Swiss Army knife for doing a lot of different things, a lot of different types of interactions. So it is a way that you can have collaborative whiteboards with students, and you can record those collaborative sessions. You can into a kind of a screencast. You can share them and publish them. It's a pretty powerful program, and there are a few different versions of this. The Explain Everything Interactive Whiteboard app is the most current one. It's super easy to use, and there are lots of tutorials on how to use it out there, and how to enable collaboration. Basically, you click on the little light bulb down in the corner, and it pretty much walks you through the process of inviting others to join you in a collaborative space. And it's real-time collaboration also. You can also you can use it for direct screencasting as well. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The other nice thing is that it connects to Dropbox, it connects to Google Drive and other services. So if you have a presentation, if you have a PDF presentation that you made from a PowerPoint presentation, and you want to use that as a starter point for the whiteboard, you can do that. You can import it ahead of time before the session, before you invite people, and each slide will appear on a new page. So it's a super great way to start that. Anyway, preload content. There are a lot of different annotation tools out there. Notability, we talked about already. PDF Expert is one that I use and works pretty well. What I like about PDF Expert is that you can actually edit the, if the PDF has been saved with text and not just as a flat pixel image, you can actually edit the text in this in this app. But you can also annotate, draw on top, make notes, and then save it again. Explain Everything is an app that you can use for video annotation. You can draw on top of videos. Screencasting, I'm going to say Explain Everything again is my #1 choice for screencasting on a mobile device. It's just so easy. It's so easy to use, and it will record basically whatever is on the screen of your iPad or iPhone, and along with your voice. And you can move through a series of pages and annotate them with your voice and draw on top all at the same time. And then you export it as a that you can then host on YouTube or on our UAF Kaltura server and the media space, and then embed it into your class. You can also have students do screencasting too. Screenchomp, I believe, is free. Explain Everything is not free, but it's worth however much you pay for it, $10 or something. Screenchomp is one that is free and super easy to use for students if you're having them do presentations in that video format with slides potentially. Collecting and curating. So there's some apps that are really nice for doing this sort of activity. And I recommend that my students use some form of collecting mechanism. And these are ways that you can, when you're out surfing around or researching, doing your research for a project or on a topic, you can save the site. Pocket is really great for saving to read later. You can also, once you've put your link into Pocket, you can read it offline later on. Feedly is more of a curation tool, so you subscribe to sites you're interested in through their RSS feeds. So if they have an RSS feed, which you don't even need to know that, you just put in the address, the web address, and it will figure it out. Feedly will figure it out, and it presents it in this nicely organized manner, and so you can get all of your news in one place every day. And then from there, you can do things like share it to Pocket, where if you find something that you want to keep and read later, or is important for a particular reason, you can share it in a lot of different ways. So it can go into Evernote, it could go into Pocket. There's a lot of connections, different connections. You can email it to yourself if you wanted. Pinterest is another one that, if you're working in any kind of visually rich, especially a visual rich research, that's an amazing way to collect items on a particular topic, items and links out to the original source.
One thing that I try to do is sometimes I kind of get set in my ways when I'm working on my laptop. So I look for equivalent app on the iPad so that I'm using the same tool, but I'm able to use it with both devices.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I've found really great, iPad apps, but I'm not working on my iPad all the time, so I'm not able to connect those two. So that's one thing I kind of look for. Yeah,
and a lot of those apps will, if you have one that like Feedly or Pocket and Pinterest, they all sync with your account, so you can get to the same information no matter where you're working. Yeah. Image and movie editing, really, your mobile device probably has something already built in. I know that Apple devices come with Photos, the photo app that has basic editing and iMovie already installed. And actually now you can edit movies, you can crop movies and do simple things with them within the photo area itself. So those are really great places to start. And then if you want to get fancier with them, there are hundreds and hundreds of apps that you can use. And ones that I like are Pixlr, Snapseed, and Photoshop Express are probably my top 3 that I use just for quick edits. And some of them have special effects and stuff, but if you're just trying to make it look a little bit better, those are the ones that I recommend. Filmora Go is a video editing app available for mobile devices that people seem to like. And also, I just learned that you can actually now do quick edits on Vimeo as well in the Vimeo app. You can also do edits on YouTube, but I don't think you can do edits on the app. But if you log into YouTube on the computer, on the browser, you can. Digital storytelling, there's Adobe has come out with this really nice package of apps for digital storytelling, and these are so easy to use that any student, if they're presenting, doing research and they have to do a presentation and it's asynchronous potentially, these apps are amazing. Digital storytelling, and by storytelling I just mean you could be telling the story of a microbe, or what is the cellular structure of something, and why is it important, and that sort of thing. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be like a fictional type story. So it's really just the way humans make meaning out of life is storytelling. And these two apps, one of them creates a web page and the other one creates a video. They are sort of integrated a little bit more if you go to spark.adobe.com on your browser, on your regular browser, but they're separate apps on the mobile device, and they are drag and drop. They're just super easy to use, and they create beautiful products. And the video, actually, you can record your voice over the video, over images that you're putting in, images and text and icons and things like that. So it's a really, really powerful tool for presentation. Reflection exercises. I could talk about WordPress and using WordPress or an app like Adobe Spark for that. But you might think about allowing students to create a reflection, just an audio reflection, or you could create an audio reflection or feedback on their work, or maybe they're reflecting on just anything really. But apps that you can record audio, I think, are nice to think about potentially. Also, Evernote is it's a note-taking. There are lots of note-taking apps out there. Evernote is one that plugs into a lot of other apps. There's a lot of cross-pollination between Evernote and other apps, and so it's easy to take what you've put into Evernote and open it, say, and explain everything. So just some ideas for different types of reflection.
And also, Jen, I know a lot of people like to reflect with images, so there's a lot of doodling program, and with the touch screen of a mobile device, you can use a stylus, or your finger. Do you have a favorite sort of doodle image creation app that you like?
Well, I do, but probably, like, if I were reflecting on a course, specifically, I would probably use something like Notability, where it's a note-taking app that I could doodle inside of. That would be easier than, they're just more set up to, or Penultimate maybe, because you can doodle inside those. I do like to use some more artistic ones that are good for painting and drawing, but that's maybe a little bit more than, I guess that's a reflective exercise as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you find, you know, apps that you can both have text pieces as well as some annotation, because sometimes, you know, sometimes that annotation where you want to just point something out with a color or something can help visually pinpoint sort of highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're just reflecting in images and no text, there are, again, many apps for doing that. You know, everything from kind of the high-end art, you know, specific apps like Procreate or Adobe Illustrator to you know, more like specifically for doodling, doodle apps. And I don't have any of those queued up here, but yeah, there's a huge variety. So again, just looking through what's available and, you know, paying attention to the reviews and looking at what it does. But really, if you're thinking about reflection and just trying to get some ideas, think about what the students are going to be showing either you or themselves in order to get there. Assessment using, you know, assessment is kind of one of those subjects that is pretty broad, and, you know, it kind of depends on, is it asynchronous or synchronous assessment? Is it, you know, what kind of assessment are you doing and how do you want that to end up? You know, is it kind of a preparatory assessment that you're, you know, asking students before class, you know, what their experience coming into class is? Is it a formative assessment, little bits along the way? Mobile apps are really good for that because you can give really great feedback visually and you know, through annotation and voice feedback, or you know, all the things that we've been talking about. So formative assessments are really, you know, mobile apps can really be helpful for that. Is it a summative assessment? You know, is this a big assessment that you're thinking about? You know, you might think about, if it's a summative assessment, are you having them make a presentation? Then maybe you could use an app such as Adobe Spark if they're doing a big presentation and they're making a video, or they're making a web, you know, a fully functional web page that is fancy with lots of links out to their research and stuff like that. Or is it just a self-assessment that they are doing? You know, there are apps for flashcards that are pretty awesome. Also, if it's a synchronous assessment, then you might want to think about using something like Socrative, which is a way to do instant polling in class. And it's pretty powerful because you can show on the fly in real time what students are thinking, and it can help to, in, you know, if you do have a synchronous session, it can help to help you navigate how you're going to present the rest of the lesson, you know, halfway through, you know, or if you're getting your points across. Yeah. Just wanted to mention this app for productivity. This is also available just online at ifttt.com. If this, then that. This is a very helpful productivity tool that you can use as an instructor to help you manage the content that your students are creating or submitting. It can help you just make sure that you're staying on top of everything that you need to know about. There are 100, I don't know how many different services that If This Then That can connect together. So if it doesn't automatically connect through, in some way through the app itself, then this app might be one that you can connect two different services with. So for instance, if you publish, if you publish a WordPress post, if a student publishes a post, then it will send you a text message, or it connects these kind of disparate services so that you can get notified, or if something happens on one service, then a different service will pick it up in some way. It's super handy for not just classroom, but just for life too,
One thing, sometimes we have our go-to places for sending announcements, and it can range depending on who you are, what your workflow is. I have, as an instructor, I have set up accounts with social media services that I don't really use, but I know students are using them. So I've used If This Then That to use the tool that I choose to use, but have it feed into those other tools, so that I make sure I'm hitting a lot of different preferences. So I don't necessarily use that other tool or go to it for other things than just sort of a redirect.
It's worth going to that site and looking through ideas, the other recipes that, I don't think they call them recipes anymore, applets they call them. Just looking through the different connections that people have made to get ideas, because it's pretty amazing. Like, you could even, I mean, I don't use this for class, but if I'm traveling and the temperature goes below 40 below in Fairbanks, if I'm gone or out of town, then I'll get a text message that lets me know that it's really cold, and maybe I need to check in with the house sitter just to make sure everything's good. So it's things like that that are just really helpful to keep us connected with in all the ways that we are connected now and can be. So, rich resource. Connecting to displays. There's different ways. If you're giving a presentation, you can connect to displays in various different ways. Reflector 2 is an app that it requires a laptop with it installed, but then you can connect. If you're using an Apple device, you can connect through AirPlay and project your device onto the screen. Also, Apple TV or Chromecast, those are ways to do that as well. I did want to mention this website, which is iteachu.uaf.edu. We have a lot of information there, a lot of faculty development opportunities. We are doing something every week, faculty development-wise, and there's a schedule there that you can find out what's happening, not just at UAF eLearning, but at OIT and the Office of Faculty Development. We really want to meet you and see you, and if there's a topic in particular that you would like to know more about, then please do contact us and use this site as a resource. There's lots of good stuff there. We publish weekly teaching tips, and those are on this site as well. So Heidi, did you have anything else?
No, I think you gave us a lot to work with, Jen. Thanks for doing that. One one thing that I did notice as you were kind of going through the apps, a lot of the apps that you talked about are iPad Pro specific apps, perhaps, and they have the advantage of being able to write and communicate and interact with the tablet with the Apple Pen.
Oh, yes, yes. I did forget to mention that.
So that has like widened up so many opportunities for people who are used to annotating with a device rather than a finger, or with a mouse. The pen just makes a lot of difference. And if you think it might be something you'd like to try, e-learning does have some iPad Pro loaners that we can loan to you, so you can test them out before making a purchase for yourself, perhaps. And we have a loaner closet of all sorts of equipment that is available. So you should again contact us, and we'll see if we have what you might be looking for, and you can test it out and maybe give some feedback. And that is just one more service that we provide.
Yeah. Yeah, the pencil, the iPad pencil, iPad Pro pencil is pretty handy, and it does work a little bit better than other styluses, but
Yeah,
they work too as well, and they're getting better and better. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you next time at the virtual iTeach Plus.
thank you, Jen.
Thanks.